All right, so you want to talk about ghosts and the afterlife? Well, strap yourselves in because today we're taking a deep dive into Hindu beliefs about those big mysteries.
Yeah, and we're going way beyond your typical ghost stories here. We're going to be looking at some serious ancient wisdom texts like the Garuda Purana, the Atharva Veda.
I got to admit, when I first started reading up on this stuff, I was really surprised by how Hinduism approaches the whole idea of ghosts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not just like, boom, there's a ghost, end of story. It's way more nuanced than that.
Oh, absolutely. You've got different categories,
Yeah.
right? Like the Buddha, often these kind of elemental spirits, sometimes they're mischievous, but they're not always straight up evil, you know?
So not your classic scary ghost under the bed kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And then you've got the pretense. These are more like those classic hungry ghosts we picture, stuck because of, well, karma. And man, that concept of karma really makes you think, doesn't it, about the impact of our choices. Like, it's not just about this life, you know?
It definitely makes you think twice about those everyday decisions. But okay, so how does someone actually become a ghost, according to Hindu beliefs? Is it all about sudden deaths and unfinished business like we see in the movies?
Well, that stuff definitely plays a role, but it goes deeper. The Garuda Purana suggests that if the funeral rites aren't done right, that can leave a soul kind of tethered here. And yeah, sudden death or a violent death, that can make the transition tougher too. But of course, then there's always karma, right? The good and the bad stuff all shaping where the soul goes next.
So karma's kind of like this spiritual compass, guiding us based on how we live. But where exactly is that compass pointing? What does Hinduism say about the afterlife itself?
See, this is where things get super interesting. Hindus believe in Panchabhuta, the five elements. So when we die, the body breaks down back into those elements. But the Atman, that's the soul, the real essence of who we are that keeps going.
It's almost like changing clothes, right? Leaving the old behind and moving on to something new.
Yeah.
I think I remember that analogy from the Bhagavad Gita.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. So the Atman goes on a journey. And there are different realms, like Pitraloka, where the ancestors hang out, or Swarga, that's more like a heaven kind of place. But then you've got Naraka, too, which is, well, not so pleasant. More of a hellish realm for those who haven't exactly been living the good life.
So it's like this whole system of rewards and consequences. But is it really as simple as good person equals instant paradise?
Ah, not quite that straightforward. Hinduism is big on samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It's like a wheel that keeps turning. And those realms we talked about, even the heavenly ones, those are just temporary stops on this journey. The real goal is moksha, which is basically breaking free from that whole cycle altogether.
Whoa. So it's not about reaching a final destination, it's about escaping the journey itself. That's pretty intense. But what about those souls that get stuck as ghosts? Is there any way for them to get off that cosmic merry-go-round?
That's where rituals come in, and they're super important in Hinduism. Hindus believe that doing the funeral rites right, the anchesti, that's key for a smooth transition to the afterlife. Cremation is seen as a way to release the soul, and then there are rituals like Shraddha, honoring the ancestors and helping them on their way.
Right, and I remember reading about Pindayan, the offering of rice balls. So it's like, I don't know, giving them provisions for the journey. Is that specifically to help the pre-tie, those hungry ghosts?
You got it. It's often part of those Shraddha ceremonies, giving sustenance to those souls that are kind of stuck, Maybe because of unfinished karma, maybe because something went wrong with the rituals.
It's almost like a spiritual helping hand.
Oh,
Okay, but what happens when things get a little scarier? Like if there are some seriously malevolent spirits involved?
then you might start seeing more specialized rituals and mantras, stuff found in the Atharva Veda and some of those tantric texts. These are designed to protect against or even pacify those not so friendly spirits.
So like real deal ghost busting stuff.
You could say that. And what's really cool is how this all connects to the different philosophical schools within Hinduism. Because even within a single religion, there can be a lot of different ways of looking at this whole ghost phenomenon.
So there are different schools of thought, even when it comes to ghosts.
Absolutely. For example, you've got Advaita Vedanta. They see ghosts as kind of like manifestations of ignorance, what they call avidya. The idea is that real liberation comes from escaping Maya, the illusion of the material world, and realizing that we're all connected to this ultimate reality.
So from that perspective, ghosts are almost like projections of our own unclarity, something to overcome rather than be afraid of.
That's a great way to put it. And then you've got Sankhya philosophy, which sees things a little differently. They believe in Purusha, which is like pure consciousness, and Prakriti, the material world. Sankhya views ghosts as Purusha that's gotten tangled up in Prakriti-like disembodied energy stuck in the material realm.
It's amazing how these different schools offer completely different perspectives on the same concept. It just shows how complex and multi-layered Hindu beliefs can be. But what about those who take a more, scientific approach? Is there any room for that kind of thinking within Hinduism?
Now, that's where things get really thought-provoking. Hinduism is rooted in ancient wisdom, but it doesn't just shut down scientific perspectives. There's actually some potential for overlap.
I'm really curious about that. Like, where do ancient wisdom and modern science actually meet on this?
Well, think about it. Modern psychology has some interesting explanations for certain kinds of ghost experiences. Things like stress, grief, even sleep paralysis, they can cause hallucinations that feel totally real, like you're actually seeing something. And then you've got this whole fascinating field of quantum consciousness, which is basically modern physics exploring the idea that consciousness might exist separately from the brain.
That almost sounds like it echoes the Hindu idea of the Atman, the soul, being separate from the body.
Right. It's still a pretty new area of research, but the potential connections are super intriguing.
It's mind-blowing to think that these ancient texts might hold clues to understanding some of the biggest mysteries of consciousness itself.
Hmm.
But we've covered so much ground already. Different types of ghosts, these intricate realms of the afterlife.
It's a lot to process.
I know, right? And we've only just scratched the surface.
Luckily for all of us, this deep dive isn't over yet. We'll be back soon to explore even more of the philosophy behind these beliefs and those mind-bending connections to modern science. So make sure you tune in next time because this journey's just getting started. Welcome back. We're picking up our deep dive right where we left off. Ghosts, the afterlife, and how Hinduism tackles these big questions. Before we jump into the different schools of thought, I wanted to circle back to that intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science. It's a point that, well, it always sparks a lot of debate.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, it's one of the things that I find most fascinating about this whole topic. Remember, we were just starting to talk about how quantum physics might actually line up with some of these ancient Hindu ideas?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That idea of consciousness existing outside the brain, the stuff they're exploring with quantum consciousness, it kind of lines up with the Hindu concept of the Atman, you know? It suggests that maybe consciousness isn't just a product of the brain, but like a fundamental part of reality itself.
That's a pretty huge shift from how mainstream science usually sees things. I mean, some people might even call it a fringe theory. What do you think about that kind of pushback?
Well, I get it, right? Whenever you have a new idea, especially one that challenges the way we normally think about things, there's going to be some skepticism. But honestly, I think it's pretty exciting that these ancient concepts are finding some common ground with cutting-edge science. It kind of hints that maybe these two different ways of knowing, science and spirituality might not be so separate after all.
It makes you wonder if those ancient seers, through meditation and deep introspection, were tapping into some levels of reality that science is only just starting to grasp now.
It's a humbling thought, for sure. But for now, why don't we bring it back to Hinduism itself?
Right.
You mentioned earlier that different philosophical schools within Hinduism have their own, well, unique takes on ghosts and the afterlife. Should we unpack that a little?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We talked about Advaita Vedanta and Sankhya, but what about some of the other perspectives? I mean, it's pretty amazing how one religion can hold so many different interpretations.
It really speaks to how rich and, well, adaptable Hinduism is. It's not about some rigid dogma. There's room to explore and find your own understanding. Take the Bhakti traditions, for example. They really emphasize devotion to deities like Vishnu or Shiva, and they see the afterlife through that lens.
Okay, so what's the core belief in those Bhakti traditions, and how does it tie into the whole afterlife thing?
So in Bhakti, it's all about cultivating a deep personal relationship with the divine, through devotion and surrender. And the belief is that that kind of sincere devotion, it can purify the soul, help resolve any karmic hangups that might lead to, well, becoming a ghost.
So it's like almost like a spiritual lifeline, a way to reach out to a higher power for help if a soul gets kind of lost.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. It's a path that emphasizes grace and divine intervention, a way
Yeah.
to navigate those tricky parts of the afterlife. And then, of course, you've got Tantra, which, well, Tantra often gets misunderstood, but it has a very unique and I think pretty empowering perspective on all of this.
Tantra always seems to be surrounded by so much mystery, and honestly, a lot of misinformation, too. What's their take on ghosts and the afterlife?
Well, Tantra is this mystical tradition, right? And
Yeah.
they explore all these rituals and practices that are specifically designed to interact with spirits, maybe even pacify them. It's about recognizing the power of these subtle energies and finding ways to work with them constructively.
That sounds way more hands-on and proactive than some of those other philosophies we talked about. Would you say that Tantra is more about actively engaging with the spiritual realm instead of just accepting fate?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Tantra says, hey, we have some agency here. We can actually influence our spiritual journey through practice, through specific techniques. It's not about sitting back and waiting for things to happen. It's about actively participating in the whole transformation process.
It's like, I don't know, almost like a spiritual toolbox, right?
Yeah.
All these tools for navigating those unseen realms. But it's interesting, all these different approaches still come back to the concept of karma, right?
Oh, absolutely. Karma is that common thread running through all these different schools of thought. It's the principle of cause and effect, the idea that our actions have consequences, and not just consequences we can see immediately. They ripple out, into this life and beyond.
So whether you're talking about breaking free from that cycle of rebirth, or performing rituals for your ancestors, or even encountering a ghost, it's all happening within this web of karma.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful messages in Hinduism. It encourages us to really live with intention, to be mindful of the choices we make because they have an impact, a ripple effect that goes way beyond what we can see.
That's a pretty humbling thought, but also, kind of empowering. Like we actually have some say in what happens to us, even in the face of the unknown. But okay, we've been talking a lot about theory. Are there any real-world examples, stories, situations that show how this all plays out?
Oh, tons, both from ancient texts and, well, from what people experience today. Remember those epics we talked about, the Mahabharata and Ramayana? They're full of stories about ghosts. Often they're cautionary tales or stories that show the power of Dharma.
Are there any that really stand out to you?
Well, there's one from the Mahabharata that's pretty powerful. The Pandava brothers. They encounter the spirit of their dad, King Pandu, who's become a preta, a hungry ghost, because of some stuff he did in the past. And so the brothers perform these rituals to help him find peace and move on.
It's a good reminder that even kings and heroes, they're not exempt from karma. But what about today? I mean, do people in India still believe in and experience these things?
Oh, totally. It's incredibly common to hear stories, especially in villages and around temples, people talking about interactions with spirits. And these experiences, people take them seriously. They often address them through those traditional rituals and practices we talked about.
It just shows you these beliefs aren't some dusty old relic of the past. They're still very much alive and shaping how people see and experience the world. But with science becoming more prominent, and, well, more secular views becoming more common, I wonder how Hinduism reconciles those ancient beliefs with how we understand the world today. It seems like there could be some conflict there.
That's a big question, and I think the answer lies in how adaptable Hinduism is. It's a religion that's always been open to different ways of thinking and interpreting things. It's not about clinging to strict dogma, but finding what's meaningful and relevant in a world that's constantly changing.
So it's about bridging that gap between tradition and the modern world, finding a way to make sense of those ancient beliefs through a more modern lens.
Exactly. A lot of Hindus today, they see their beliefs through the lens of symbolism and metaphor. They recognize the psychological and spiritual truths in these ancient traditions, even if they don't interpret everything literally.
So maybe they don't think of ghosts as literal beings, but more like representations of things that are unresolved.
Yeah.
Fears, attachments, things like that.
I think that's a great way to look at it. It's about finding ways to use these ancient teachings to understand life, death, the whole human experience in a way that makes sense to us today.
So even if you don't believe in ghosts in a literal sense, the stories and the teachings about them can still teach us something about ourselves, about how we deal with the unknown. It's a fascinating approach, but I have to be honest, I still find myself kind of grappling with the idea of ghosts as real beings. Do you ever question these beliefs, even with all your knowledge and research?
Of course. I mean, doubt and questioning, those are essential to any intellectual or spiritual journey. If you just blindly believe things without thinking critically, well, you don't really grow, do you? I'm always evaluating, researching, looking for new perspectives to deepen my understanding.
So it's not about having all the answers, but about being open to the mystery and keep exploring.
Exactly. That's what I find so compelling about this whole subject. It pushes us to the edge of what we know, forces us to confront what we believe, and, well, maybe even change our minds about what's real.
It reminds us that there's always more to learn, more to discover, and that the journey itself is just as important as the destination. But speaking of journeys, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. From ancient texts to modern scientific theories, it's been quite a ride.
It has. And honestly, I feel like we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover, so many more connections to explore. But maybe this is a good place to pause and reflect on what we've talked about so far.
I agree, it's been quite a journey. We'll be back soon to continue exploring the world of ghosts and the afterlife through the lens of Hinduism, delving deeper into the symbolism, the rituals, and what these ancient beliefs can teach us about life, death, and the mysteries of the universe. All right, welcome back. We're wrapping up our deep dive into ghosts and the afterlife in Hindu beliefs. And this time, I really want to focus on the rituals, the stuff that connects those beliefs to actual practice.
Yeah, rituals are super central in Hinduism, that's for sure. And what's really cool about them is that they go way beyond just trying to appease spirits or ward off evil. They're all tied up with ideas about family, duty, the whole continuity of life. They give people a real tangible way to connect with these huge, kind of abstract ideas.
Right. We talked a bit about antiesti, those funeral rites that help guide the soul after death. But I'm kind of fascinated by Shraddha. It's an annual thing, right? What's the point of it? I got to admit, I'm still a little fuzzy on the details.
Okay, so Shraddha, it's all about honoring your ancestors, taking care of them in Pitraloka, that realm where they go after death. It's a way to show your respect and make sure they're doing okay. Involves offerings of food, water, prayers, that kind of thing. It's recognizing that even though someone's passed on, the connection, that bond, it doesn't just disappear.
It's like sending a care package to your loved ones in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
A way to stay connected and show you still care.
Yeah.
Oh, and what about that pindayan thing we talk about? Offering rice balls to the pretas, those hungry ghosts that are kind of stuck. Is that part of Shraddha or something separate?
It can be both, actually. You often see Pindayan incorporated into Shraddha ceremonies, but you can also do it on its own. The idea is to help those souls that are hanging around can't move on, Maybe because of bad karma, maybe the rituals weren't done right.
It's a really beautiful act of compassion, I think.
Yeah.
Like, even in death, there's still potential for growth, for things to better. But are these rituals something that only priests or, super religious people do? Can anyone participate?
No, not at all. Priests often lead these ceremonies, yeah. But the basic ideas, the intentions behind them, those are for everyone. You see families all over India doing these rituals no matter what their social status is, how much they know about the religion. It's really about that heartfelt connection, not about following a bunch of rigid rules.
So it's more about what's in your heart, the love, the understanding that life and death are connected, more than just going through the motions of the ritual.
Exactly. These rituals give you a way to connect with something bigger than yourself. To see that existence keeps going, that family bonds, they last. It's a way to actively take part in this whole cycle of life, death, and rebirth. What Hinduism calls samsara.
Right, samsara, that cosmic wheel that keeps on turning. But is there any way to get off that wheel? I know we touched on moksha, liberation, but how do you actually achieve that freedom from the cycle of rebirth?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That search for liberation, it's at the heart of so many spiritual traditions. In Hinduism, there are different paths you can take. Some focus on meditation and realizing who you truly are, like Jnana Yoga. Others are about selfless actions, helping others, that's Karma Yoga. And then you've got Bhakti Yoga, which is all about devotion and surrendering to the divine.
It's so interesting how Hinduism has all these different approaches.
Yeah.
It recognizes that there's not just one right way to grow spiritually. You got to find what speaks to your soul, your understanding of what's divine. But for those who haven't reached moksha yet, what happens to them? Are they just wandering through these realms of ghosts and suffering forever?
Not necessarily. Hinduism doesn't see the afterlife as some final judgment. It's more like a journey of progress, of evolution. So even if a soul doesn't get to moksha in this life, they keep going, keep evolving through rebirth, gradually letting go of that karma, refining their understanding of things.
It's almost like, a cosmic school, right?
Yeah.
You keep learning, keep growing lifetime after lifetime until finally you graduate. You reach that ultimate liberation. That's actually a really hopeful way to look at it,
Yeah.
Even if you mess up, even if you get off track, There's always another chance to learn and become better.
It is, and it shows how important every life is, every experience. Each one is a chance for growth, for transformation. But even with all this knowledge, all this understanding, I have to admit there's still something about ghosts and those unseen realms that feels, I don't know, mysterious, a little bit unsettling even. Do you ever get that feeling?
Oh, totally. I think it's totally normal to feel a little, well, spooked,
Yeah.
a little awestruck when you think about what we don't know.
Ah.
That's part of what makes exploring these ideas so fascinating. It forces you to face your fears, to question what you believe, to open your mind to things that might seem impossible.
I agree. It's about stepping outside your comfort zone and embracing those mysteries that exist just beyond what we can see, what we can easily explain. It's where ancient wisdom meets modern thinking, where science and spirituality kind of blend together. And it challenges us to think in new ways, to consider perspectives that maybe we never thought of before.
And that's what I find so incredible about Hinduism. It doesn't shy away from those big, tough questions. It embraces them. It weaves them into its stories, its philosophy, its rituals, even into everyday life. It offers this whole framework for understanding life, death, and everything in between, all while admitting that there's always more to learn, more to discover.
It's a tradition that says, hey, approach these big ideas with reverence, with curiosity, with compassion. Recognize that everything's connected and every moment is a chance to grow, to change for the better.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this sense of awe, of wonder about all these mysteries, consciousness, what's real, and how those ancient beliefs can still shape how we see the world today. And I got to ask you, dear listener, do you think those ancient beliefs about the soul, about energy, about consciousness, could they actually hold some truth about how we understand the universe, how we understand ourselves? Maybe they offer a glimpse into something deeper, something that challenges how we normally think and invites us to explore these mysteries with open minds and, well, open hearts.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring this with you all. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep digging into those rich Hindu beliefs and how they can still speak to us in this constantly changing world.
So until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, keep taking those deep dives into the unknown.